What's going on, fellas? What we have here is Sean's foundry, in the process of being made, that is. And what we've done here is made a composite layer. The fire bricks that you see here actually saved his group $170 some, because had I not added these bricks, I would have had to order another bag of the 70% alumina high temp refractory. So I also have a couple of these bricks in the bottom deck. With a 1/2 inch layer of this stuff on top of them. And below that, we have this stuff here is below the bricks, which is kind of propping the bricks up. So by spending $50 for that portion of the build, we were able to save $170. So we came out $120 ahead on that maneuver, and everything's going to be just fine. The temperature needed to melt these bricks is never going to pass through this much refractory. And for the most part, you won't be running this thing at 3100 degrees all the time. So let me show you the top here. Got everything just drying. Everything else came in the mail today. So I'm going to be cleaning this all up. We'll be chopping these blocks off. Dump this sand out of here. And I have purchased a $70,000 diamond blade grinder. These things are amazing. Well, actually it was like $38, so pretty close. But I ain't hating. This thing's awesome. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take a diamond blade, we're gonna crop the top of these blocks off, and then we're gonna shave the face down and get us a nice, good, clean surface. I think this might be our high temp compound. I'll have to check. Okay, fellas, so here is said compound. This stuff has 5-star on every rating. You don't come across that very often. 16 ratings, $55 for a little pint jar of this stuff. And what it does is it glows white hot. And if you read the ratings on this thing, they're pretty amazing. You see here it's rated up to 5,000 degrees. So we are protecting the foundry from anything that we're about to do to it with this stuff. Plus, it glows so hot that it just works out better as an IR emitter. And I'm going to leave a link in the description. There's one 4-star. Because it's expensive, I think. Well, a little hard to work with. Someone else said it was expensive. But I'm going to leave a link in the description for this stuff. If you're watching this video because you're trying to build a foundry or a forge that doesn't fall apart, then this is one of the things you're going to want to add to it. Or if you have a forge or foundry that you think you just need a couple more 100 degrees out of it, this stuff here is said to increase the temperature simply by the fact that it glows white hot. But we're going to face everything with a 5,000 degree high reflective compound that's going to give off infrared energy better than some surfaces will. If you don't have a high surface temperature on your refractory, you won't get that infrared radiation emanating onto the crucible. The flame is not all that is heating a crucible inside of a forge or foundry. And from what I've read about this refractory coating, it truly does increase the performance of a forge or foundry. And it makes sense. If you have small little filament type hairs coming off of this compound that are glowing white hot versus fire brick that's glowing, you know, orange hot, which one do you think is going to emanate hotter infrared radiation? So that is what's going on with this stuff. It will glow white hot, whereas fire brick and stuff would need too much energy to do that. This is such a good insulator, I think, that it just reflects all the heat maybe. But that's where we are in the build. I'm going to get started on that tonight. I just wanted to make sure everything was cured completely before I bust this sand mold out of here. And you got to be careful when you're looking at information online about building forges and foundries. I've heard of far too many nightmares. There are people out there who would tell you the truth. And most people, when they advertise their ideas or something they've built, they are there to promote it, which means they are concealing every flaw and fallacy of the plan from the beginning. So, like for example, I initially looked at some videos from King of Random, who built a couple of foundries. I then found a video subsequent to that where a gentleman had built this very forge and it fell apart after one use. They don't tell you that in the King of Random videos, but the gentleman who used the exact same recipe showed us the truth, and he talks about this hard casting, and stuff is solid as a rock, and it can withstand 3,200 degrees. So we should be good to go. There's a lot of metal prongs in here. That are sticking up off the steel. We also have these bent over notches that's kind of eagle clawing this capstone in place. Now, whether or not we wrap an additional layer of insulation around this is something to think about down the line. We're going to test it and find out. I want to show you guys this thing. This right here is a bad dude. This is a 3,272 degree infrared thermometer. You see the laser pattern that it puts off? But just freaking awesome, dude. I can't wait to try this thing out. It's got a really cool backlight to it. And you wouldn't believe how cheap this thing was. Now, in years past, this is the best you could do. This right here, you're lucky to get 1,000 degrees out of it. Usually when you get past 900, it goes straight to high. It says hello to you. But I'm going to do a quick little demonstration. We'll give this thing a quick try, because I'm amazed that this thing is on the market for as cheap as it is. I think I paid 139 bucks for it. Okay, these things are typically like 50 bucks, 60 bucks. That makes sense. That's the other one that I have there. This model here is $114. And I kid you not, last time I looked up one of these and tried to find one of these, it was probably about 5 years ago. And you could not get a thermometer that did this for under $800. This is the type of prices I was seeing, guys. Now, this was just 5 years ago. $1,000, that's exactly what I was thinking. This one right here is another good example of that. This is what you used to get. And now all of a sudden they've got all these things on the market. Whoa! What the heck? Look at this thing. That's a beast. It'll hit $4 grand. So at any rate, that's not the case anymore. Like, look at this one here. The unit I have can do that. Just doing a little heat treatment here now. Trying to get the water out of it before we do a firing. We're going to start off with just a propane heat up. Try and get it up to about 900 degrees. I might just go ahead and do the whole thing with propane. I'm trying not to spend an arm and a leg on this. So here is our lid with the side crimps. It has inner crimps too. I should have put crimps on this exhaust tube, but this is eventually going to burn out of here, even though it's stainless steel. This is just kind of meant to be a form, so I didn't want to rely on that. So the inner prongs, there's a quadrant of inner prongs that hold that together midpoint. And there's the crucible. I didn't want to leave a lot of space in between the crucible and the event. We kind of want pretty intense action going on in there. For the most part, I think a bigger crucible would be easier to get out of there, but I couldn't afford the actual crucible that we need. It turns out to do 3100 degrees, guys, they're recommended a zirconium crucible. And a zirconium crucible this big is in the $500 area. So, not sure what we're gonna do. I did find a couple of websites that will make custom crucibles for a really decent price. I just set this one in here. This is not a graphite clay crucible. This is a silicon carbide, which is fairly higher in temperature than the first one that we have. I'm going to leave a link in the description for this crucible also. This is what you get if you buy a graphite crucible, the graphite clay. I'm under the impression that graphite crucibles are only for induction furnaces and vacuum furnaces where oxygen isn't a huge factor, because I'm almost certain that we just literally burnt all the carbon out of this thing in no time and we're left with the clay. But that right there is some melted pure silica sand with a little bit of baking soda in there. Never did fire it over an hour, so it definitely needed more time. But anyway, that's the graphite, and this is the silicon carbide. We're going to be putting a hinge on this thing and everything. This thing's nowhere near done. I just wanted to be sure that the concrete was 100% set. And the other thing I like about the fire brick is, as an insulator, one would presume it's a better insulator than the refractory itself because of the porosity. So, very interesting nonetheless. We have a 3-inch refractory wall, guys, so that's going to hold in quite a bit of heat, but in all reality, it may behoove one to wrap this thing in a secondary insulation, because this metal will get hot and give off heat just from the conduction of this area here. That heat's going to spread, and from this throat, that heat's going to spread. Ooh, she's a little toasty. So I'm going to let this thing sit for about 10 hours like this. I just want to remove all possibilities of cracking it. This is not my forge, or not my foundry. And I want to do everything by the book. So I'm just going to let this thing sit here and boil all the moisture off for a long time, because one of the compounds we use calls for a different drying technique than the other. This is not how you dry the 70% alumina, but we have that other compound in the bottom propping up the fire bricks, which have a 1/2-inch layer of the 70% aluminum refractory on top of that. So just to be safe, we're going to dry it out this way, and then I'm trying to score a bunch of free waste oil. That might be happening tomorrow, and if that happens, we will be using that to cure the refractory.